Yeah, it's about that time. It is about that time right now. Hey, everybody, Steve here, the retired hobby tech guy, American expat here in Korea, military retiree, and came here with a couple of suitcases. We sold everything in the United States, and we're retired here. My wife she was a Korean national, became a U.S. citizen, and then we came back to Korea on an F4 and F1 visa. So, yeah, we're here. We're sitting in Korea enjoying. It's 5 July here, and what is it, about 8 o'clock in the morning? So, we had our 4th of July yesterday. For those of you in the United States, happy 4th of July. We had a good one. Granted, it was a little hot and humid, but that's what we got going on. And with that, we've got other people that have been asking for a dedicated video on the subjects of taxes here in Korea. Being an American expat, maybe your military retirement, your Social Security, some of you get VA disability, and then you have IRAs or 401ks, and the question comes, well, will I get taxed twice on, if I'm living in Korea and I'm on a visa? Those are valid questions. How much am I going to get taxed? Am I going to get dinged by the United States? They're always going to get their taxes unless you get rid of your citizenship. And then the question is, well, some countries will tax worldwide income. So it's a valid question. Before we jump into that, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. That would help out. I'm trying to get more views, subscribers, all of that cool YouTube stuff to please the YouTube algorithm gods, and that would go a long way in that endeavor. With that, we do have an admin note here. My Facebook account has been deleted. Yes, apparently my video that I did on Korean immigration and what they're doing here in Korea, I cited a number of articles going over. Probably about 80% of the video was going over different articles from one side to the other, and then the remaining 20% was my opinion and what I see living here in Korea and my experience. And because I mentioned crimes and because I mentioned certain types of crimes against progeny, if you have to look that up, you'll know what I mean. Facebook didn't like it, struck my channel. There was a part to appeal, and it was like, okay, well, yeah, you can appeal this decision because, and I don't understand why, because it was just reporting news articles that have been published, like major Korean news sources here in Korea that you can access on the internet. It's not like it's shady dark web stuff, it was just stating crime stats and certain crimes and so on and so forth. And maybe it was kind of an adult topic, but it wasn't, advocating violence or anything. So anyway, Facebook deleted my account. There's a little appeal button. There's no human interaction at all. Click the appeal and they just kind of scan your video. So they do audio to text, and then they scan it again for, keywords and flagged words. And it came back, nope, you can't do it. The other thing that ended up happening is I was like, man, well, that's messed up. Apparently the community standards doesn't allow you to say certain words. So instead of saying somebody got SA'd, you can look up, you can say grape, take the G off. So somebody was graped, or you grape somebody, grape progeny, or, it's just weird stuff. And so we have this replacement thing going on. And then after a while, I saw that I could open up another Facebook account. So I did that. And about an hour later, that thing got deleted as well. The interesting thing, and even though I had a different email address, different phone number, it still got deleted. Tried to appeal, still that didn't work. It was very, very disconcerting, because what happens if somebody gets their Facebook page hacked, which, that happens a lot, and people get their accounts deleted, and there is no human being that you can talk to about this. It's just appeal, nope, doesn't matter. So if somebody hacks your channel and puts bad stuff out there, they can get your channel deleted, your account deleted on Facebook, and you can never return. Now, what's the problem? How can they know if you have a different email address and you have a different phone number? You think that would work. But no, they do facial recognition. So after you sign up with a new Facebook account, you have to do facial recognition. So it's you go on there, it says facial recognition, and you have to do a selfie, turn your head and turn your head and turn your head. So they do this facial recognition. So it doesn't matter if you have a different email address or different phone number, whatever it is, because now it's all going off of facial recognition. So your identity in facial recognition, it doesn't matter how many accounts, email accounts that you have, or different phone numbers or whatever. If one has been banned, you're banned across the multiverse. So yeah, so dealing with that. So I'm looking for a different social media platform to go to. I'm looking at MeWe, and if you've got any suggestions, put it down. Okay, so enough of the admin stuff in the crazy Facebook. We're going to get down to business because we're talking about, will I get taxed twice? What are the considerations? And we're going to jump right into this. Now, you might want to grab some coffee. It's going to be a little bit detailed, but I did some nice graphics and tried to summarize all this in the best way that I could. Okay, so we're going to jump right into this. Here we are. Taxes in Korea 2025. Will I get taxed twice because I'm an American living in Korea? Demystifying what income is taxed by the United States and Korea. Isn't that pretty? Okay, we're going to start off here. What money is taxed in Korea for expats? We're talking about Social Security, military pensions, VA disability, IRAs, 401ks, and so on and so forth. Again, the short answer is, for a U.S. citizen living in Korea, your Social Security, VA disability, and U.S. military pensions are generally not taxable. They are taxable only in the United States according to the U.S.-Korea Tax Treaty. Your visa status does not change this, but it is relevant in determining your tax residency. So again, when it says that it's not taxable, it's generally tax laws change in Korea and the United States. Matter of fact, we just had the big beautiful bill that got passed, so Social Security might not get taxed for certain individuals in the United States, which, yeah, it shouldn't be taxed. So yeah, that's the short answer. We're going to get into the long answer here. And by the way, if you have any questions, put them in the comment section and I'll be able to see them and we'll address them as we go on. Please kind of stay on topic with the things that we're going over, the taxes and all this stuff. And then if you have other questions, wait until the end and we can just do a free-for-all Q&A thing. Okay, we're going to go on to the next one. What money is taxed in Korea for expats? The importance of tax residency. Your visa, like I'm on an F1 visa, my wife has an F4 visa, there's other people, expats, military retirees that came to Korea that are on different visas. Maybe it's an F513, or maybe you're over here on a work vacation visa, maybe you're a digital nomad, maybe you're an education visa. There's a whole ton of visas over here in Korea. So it's not like there's not a lot. There is a lot. But your tax residency is very important. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. So for a Korean tax resident, you're generally considered a tax resident if you have a domicile or have resided in Korea for 183 days or more during a tax year. So that's kind of important. Keep that in mind. Do note that if you come here on a tourist visa, that's 90 days. And then some people do like a border run, they'll come back for another 90 days. That's kind of skirting the issue, and it's not really, it's a gray area, and Korea is cracking down on border jumping and border runs. The significance, as a tax resident of Korea, Korea would normally have the right to tax your worldwide income. Okay, however, the U.S. and Korea Tax Treaty provides specific exemptions or exceptions for certain types of income, and that is what protects your U.S. benefits from double taxation. So, yeah, and it's a little involved. It's a little involved. There, you might have to do some paperwork when you file your taxes and so on and so forth. It depends on where your income is from, and we're going to talk about that as well. So for the people out there that are recipients of military pensions and or Social Security, we've got you covered. When we look at military pensions, Article 22 1A states that rumination, including pensions paid by a contracting state, and in this case the United States, to any individual for services rendered to that state is taxable only in that state. So in other words, your U.S. military pension is taxable only in the United States and not Korea. So again, the government is giving you your pension based on the 20 or so years of service that you gave to the country. In other words, you're not currently working, it's a pension, and the state in this case is the United States. So yeah, your military pension is taxable only in the United States and not Korea. But what about Social Security? This is where Social Security comes into play, and it says Article 22.2 states, any pension paid out by or out of funds created by one of the contracting states to any individual in respect to personal services rendered shall be taxable only in that contracting state. So again, similar to the military pension, your U.S. Social Security is taxable only in the United States and not Korea. In other words, you paid your quarter hours, you've got to the age of where 62 or above, whatever, those laws change as well, and you're receiving your Social Security check from the U.S. government based on the work that you did in the past. So yeah, and there's a little reference down there that you can take a look at and a website link. The good news is that I provide website links for all this information. It's down in the description box, so if you want to see those things and read the PDF on the income tax treaty, it's a boring read, and I have some other links as well. So yeah, military pension, Social Security, you're not taxed in Korea. Whew, yeah, that is awesome. So, Uncle Sam is always going to get theirs unless you become a citizen of a foreign country and renounce your citizenship, but we can at least not get taxed on our military pension and Social Security. So that's like tax-free living in Korea, which is nice. Okay, the other question, this is probably the second biggest question that I get is VA disability. Are your VA disability benefits, are they taxed in Korea? These benefits are paid by or out of funds created by the United States government. They are not payments for current work, but are a form of government rumination. In the United States, VA disability benefits are not taxable. Yay! While this doesn't automatically make them non-taxable in Korea, their classification under the treaty as a U.S. government payment is what provides the exemption from Korean taxes. So your VA disability payments that you receive, they're from the United States government, and they are taxable only in the United States and therefore not taxable in Korea. So that is great. So basically, we're going to do a little bit of a summary here, and we're going to take a look and see what money is taxed in Korea for expats. We're talking about military pensions, Social Security, and VA disability, and this little chart over here can show you that the military pension, is it taxed in Korea? Nope. The reason, it's paid for by the U.S. government for services rendered. Is it taxable in the U.S.? Yes. Maybe someday it won't be. I don't know. We can always keep our fingers crossed. Social Security, is it taxable in Korea? No. It is taxable only in the source country, which is the United States. Is it taxable in the United States? Yes. But as I mentioned before, things change. And now with the big, beautiful bill that just passed here in 2025, it looks like there's going to be some Social Security tax-free for certain people, individuals. The bill hasn't been signed. It has been approved, and it's just waiting to get signed by the president. But yeah, way back in the day, originally, Social Security was not taxed at all. And it's interesting because President Biden, in the last administration, he actually was one of, when he was, I think he was a senator or whatever, he was working in government, and he voted and wanted Social Security. He voted that Social Security would get taxed, which I'm an independent, but that's bad, in my opinion. Okay, so we're going to drive on. So anyway, the main point is Social Security is not taxed in Korea, and we might get a little bit of tax relief here in the United States. So it's always benefit, and it would behoove you if you would contact a tax professional on that. Now we get down to VA disability. Is that taxable in Korea? The answer is no. Again, it's payment from a U.S. government that's taxable only in the United States, and VA disability is taxable in the United States. The reason I put yes is because there was some conflicting information, but generally no. So we'll just kind of leave it at that. Okay, there are some links down here, and if you have any information to update this, if you see anything that I post that is wrong or incorrect or misinformed, please send me an email, and you can get my email address at the end of this video. So basically we end up that in regards to Korea, military pensions, Social Security, and VA disability are not taxed. Terry Lay comes up with a question and says, would a pension from a company you work for be taxed in Korea? You know, this is perfect timing. Give yourself a gold star. Give me a like, because this is just the universe coming together, and we're going to talk about some of those things. So let's drive on. What money is taxed? So do I need to file a Korean tax return? We'll get to your question, Terry, here really darn quick. Korean tax filing, it talks about that if you're a tax resident, usually if you have any Korean source income permitted by your visa. So with the visa that my wife has, she has the permission to work in Korea. But if she made income from a Korean employer, she would have to file a Korean tax return. We're both retired, so we don't. You would typically report your worldwide income and then use your tax treaty provisions to exclude U.S. benefits from Korean taxation. So yeah, Korea is going to get their tax if it's a Korean source income. U.S. tax filing. As a U.S. citizen, you must continue to file a U.S. tax return every year, regardless of where you live. I know some people had asked me questions, so you live in Korea, so you don't got to pay federal taxes. If only that was the case, but it's not. You report your worldwide income, so even if you had Korean sourced income, you would need to indicate that on your taxes. So yeah, you would report your Social Security, your military pension is taxable income on your U.S. tax return. And again, you would have to get with a tax professional if you earned money from a Korean source as you're living in Korea, as permitted by your visa. And then, yeah, it's a whole thing there. So anyway, again, a little disclaimer, it's highly recommended that you get with a tax professional that is competent on Korean taxes and U.S. taxes, and you can find some of those. I'm going to see if I can find a reputable tax preparer for expats, American expats that live in Korea, and see if I can recommend that. I don't want to get somebody that's questionable, trying to go over reviews and look at different services and see how much they charge. Again, it's got to be a good balance. I don't want it to be like H&R Block where you're paying $200 or $300 for the 1040 form. That's just highway robbery. So possibly that will come up in the near future. So now we're going to get back to Terry's question that says, pension from a private company. I'm assuming a private company that you work for. And we're going to dip into that when we talk about this other income. So in other words, IRAs, 401ks, and we'll get into private pensions in the next one. So let's just talk about IRAs and 401ks. The tax treatment for your private retirement accounts like IRAs and 401ks and private pensions are completely different from your government benefits. So the short answer is, for a U.S. citizen who is a tax resident of Korea, in other words, you have your visa, your ARC card, or your KRC card, Korean registration card, the distributions from your U.S.-based IRAs, 401ks, and private pensions are taxable in Korea. I know, it's rough. But that taxation treaty that the United States has with Korea, there are some things, and you can get some tax credits. So you need to look into that as well. So when we look at private pensions and annuities, under Article 23(1) and 2, it states in this one, except as provided in Article 22, government functions, pensions and other similar rumination paid to a resident of a contracting state in consideration for past employment shall be taxable only in the state. Annuities paid to a resident of a contracting state shall be taxable only in that state. So let's break this down. This is where it gets a little bit confusing because you think contracting state, doesn't that mean the United States? Not necessarily. A resident of a contracting state, in this case, you live in Korea for more than 183 days, you're a tax resident of Korea. So Korea could be that contracting state. Pensions in consideration of past employment describes your 401k and any private company pensions that you receive. Annuities are looking at IRAs and other similar, devices under this. Taxable only in that state. This means that the country of residence where you reside in Korea has the sole right to tax the above income because you're a resident of that contracting state. Yeah, I don't know why they make it so confusing. They just need to dumb it down for people like me, and it took a while for me to get that through my head. So yeah, you're going to get taxed on that. In the real world, how is this going to work? It's fine, contracting state and this and that, and paid by governments for past this and whoosies and whatsies. When you take a distribution from your 401k or IRA or your private pension, you must declare that as income on your Korean tax return. It is subject to Korean income taxes according to the tax treaty. The exemption in the United States, because, this is the good news, because the treaty grants Korea the exclusive right to tax this income, it is exempt from U.S. income tax. You'll still report the distribution of your U.S. tax on your U.S. tax return, your 1040 or whatever. However, you must file an IRS Form 8833, which is a treaty-based return position disclosure. Now, on this form, you'll cite Article 23 and so on and so forth as the reason why your pension and IRA distribution is not taxable in the United States. This form effectively removes the income from your U.S. taxable income calculation. And again, it's kind of like a tax credit. When you start getting deep into this and you start contacting or reading blogs from tax attorneys that talk about international and double taxation and tax treaties, it is a deep rabbit hole to go. So again, see a qualified tax professional on this. I'm just kind of go over this as general information, entertainment value only, but to kind of point you in the right direction to a professional to answer all your questions. But generally what you'll end up seeing is that with these distributions, you can get an exemption from the U.S. and you can get like a tax credit to file on your U.S. tax returns. Korea is going to get theirs. United States will give you a tax credit, and so it's kind of a wash. As far as amounts and percentages and all that stuff, I didn't want to go into that because there's so many different variables, like how much are you making? Well, some people make a little, some people make a lot, and that will skew with the numbers, and I just didn't want to go through all that because, yeah, that's on you. Okay. So yeah, interesting stuff, how that works in the real world. When we look at the tax table for private pensions, IRAs, and 401ks, we got the little, table for dummies, table for people like me. Your private pension, is it taxable in Korea? Yes, because of the treaty, so I just didn't want to put it in there. Is it taxable in the U.S.? No, because you're going to get tax credits. And again, the tax laws change from time to time, so be sure you check with a qualified professional. IRAs, and those distributions, can they be taxed in Korea? Yes. Taxable in the United States? No. Again, there's going to be a tax credit, so you're not going to get that double taxation, and the same thing with a 401k. And again, there's down at the bottom, there's the treaty relief-based return position disclosure under section 6114 or 7701B, and there's the link in the description box as well. So basically, when we go into all of this and we're talking about taxes as an American expat in Korea or maybe other countries, this will kind of point you in the right direction on, what is taxable and what is not. And depending if a country has a treaty with the United States, maybe treaties are a little different than what Korea has with the United States. Maybe another country, maybe there's other considerations, or they change some of how they taxed, or how there's tax credits, or whatever. But we do know for a fact that with your military pensions, your Social Security, and your VA disability, those are not taxable in other countries. As far as those other vehicles, 401ks, private pensions, IRAs, and so on and so forth, those are considered worldwide income, and other countries might have different percentages in which they're going to tax that income. But the good thing is you can get a tax credit generally because of a tax treaty that the United States has with that country. Now, the particulars, you'd have to dig into that for the different countries that you're considering, which is something to look at if you're looking for overseas retirement. So is there a simpler way to kind of keep in mind? Because this is a lot of information. I'm getting older. I'm going to be 59 here pretty soon. And it's hard to keep track of all this stuff. It's like, okay, it took so much research. And if you appreciate that, like and subscribe to the channel. But I came up with this, what money is taxed in Korea for expats, how to determine taxes, is answering the question, who is paying me? Yeah, it comes down to that. It's got to be simple for me to get it. So if the money comes from the U.S. government, so in other words, your Social Security, Department of Defense, Department of Veterans Affairs, it is generally taxable only in the United States according to Article 22. Now, if the money comes from a private source, a former employer, Fidelity, Vanguard, all the retirement accounts and things like that, 401ks, IRAs, so on and so forth, it is generally taxable only in the country of residence. So if you're living in Korea, you would get taxed on those things. But again, there's a good side, a bright side. The light at the end of the tunnel is that you can get some tax credits from the United States, so you won't get dinged as hard. And then there's also the consideration of, the tax that you pay in Korea. Do you get a tax credit in the United States? And if there's a big enough thing, I don't know. It's really complex. But generally what we're looking at is who pays you. And if it's the United States government, then, like Social Security, military pension, VA disability, that will end up, those are not taxed in Korea. But the other things that we talked about, if it's paid by a private company, maybe IBM, maybe Boeing, or maybe something like that, now pensions and 401ks and IRAs and, whatever it is, those can get taxed here in Korea. So for the people that are worried about double taxation, and am I going to get taxed twice for living in Korea because I'm on a visa and I'm an American expat and doing the whole that thing, there is some relief and there are some benefits to being retired overseas, especially if you have a military pension, if you have VA disability and you have Social Security. Retiring overseas can remove you don't get taxed on that stuff in a lot of countries. Again, this isn't for every single country. We're just talking about Korea. So, hopefully that answers some questions there in regards to taxation and all of that stuff and whether you're going to get taxed. I've had a number of people ask me about this. What do I need to do? What am I going to get taxed? I don't want to get taxed twice. I've had so many people ask me tax questions. It's like I better put out a video, and I've gone over this in the past, but people wanted a dedicated video and they wanted links to information and all that stuff, and I've got that in the description box down below. And again, I'm not guaranteeing that any of this is correct. Okay, I try to do my best, but again, the onus is on you to trust but verify the information with a qualified tax professional. So for me, when I can go onto the interwebs and I can find links to the IRS or VA disability or, getting direct deposit, that's another thing that comes into play. This is a little bonus round. You can get your Social Security direct deposited to foreign banks, depending on the country that it is. Your VA disability, your DFAS, your military pension can be deposited into international bank accounts. And there's links for those in the description box down below. We got a question. Says, please provide detailed information regarding the tax implication for rental properties owned by expatriates who receive proceeds from the United States government in South Korea. So, rental properties owned by expats who receive proceeds from the United States government in South Korea. Yeah, that is, that is, you would have to get with a tax professional on that. So we have rental property owned by an expat who received proceeds from the United States government in South Korea. But what we just talked about was like Social Security, military pensions, VA disability, are payments from the U.S. government based on past work. Okay? So there's a very clear distinction between that and this here on what you're talking about is saying that you're receiving money from the United States government because you're renting a property out and the U.S. government is paying for it. That is a current employment deal. That is not what we're talking about with regards to pensions that are tax-free. I would go out on a limb, I'm not 100% sure, but just rolling those two marbles around in my head, because you're receiving proceeds, even though it is from the U.S. government, you are being actively employed and being paid by the government, and it's a rental property. I think you're going to have to pay some taxes on, and you might get because even though, that's still a good question though, but it's you wouldn't have that money. And Korea has the right to tax worldwide income, and especially if it's a Korean property in Korea, whatever money that you're getting, I'm still thinking that Korea would say, hey, you got to pony up and pay some taxes, and then you would get a tax credit on your federal income taxes. That would be something that I need to look at, because as some of you know, and for those of you that don't, I'm considering on purchasing another apartment and renting that out, and it would be renting it out to military service members or contractors which are employed by the U.S. government, but I don't think that falls under the thing that you're talking about here, is that would that be tax-free? I think there would be some tax implications on that on the Korean side of the house. Again, that would be, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, without any information gleaning, again, the two marbles that are rolling around up here, I would say that there would be some tax implications in Korea because you're generating profit in Korea. So it's not like it's a government payment for past services. So that's what I'm going to say right now. And again, I don't know. I'll have to look into that. Very, very interesting question. So if anybody has any insight on this, please put it in the comment section down below. Shoot me an email. We'll get to the little outro thing, and I'll have my email address, and we'll discuss that as well. But yeah, it's because the U.S. government is paying, like for military personnel that are stationed in Korea. I know that Koreans get taxed when they rent out their properties to military personnel, military contractors that are stationed here at Camp Humphreys, where I'm close to. They have to pay taxes. So your tax residency is what comes into play, and where you live makes a difference. So if you're living in Korea, that might be another thing that indicates that Korea is going to get their taxes out of the deal. That's kind of a nuanced question. That is a very interesting nuanced question, but then again, government contracts to companies like Boeing or whatever, companies that are contracted to work with the U.S. military and have contractors here overseas that pay the mortgage or pay the rent of properties of these contractors. That's a private company, so that based on just what we read, that would lead me to believe that it would be taxed because Korea does have the option to tax worldwide income from private sources. So being that that is a private company or even a public company, it is not a government agency for past employment and so on and so forth, that has been concluded, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, yeah, I think it's probably going to get taxes. But I'm not 100% sure, but it is something to consider. So here is the homework assignment. If you know about this question here that we're talking about, and let me do this. This would be even better because this is going to go down. Just yep. You see that? It just went down. But here is the question. Provide detailed information regarding the tax implications for rental properties owned by expatriates. So the expat is in Korea on a visa. So your tax residency is in Korea. Now you're talking about receiving proceeds from the U.S. government for a rental property. Those are going to be taxed. I think those are going to be taxed. I'm about 98% sure those are going to be taxed by Korea, even though it comes from the U.S. government for the reasons that I gave. So, but if somebody else knows, put it in the comment section. And if you're, obviously there's a lot of people that are way smarter than me, put that in the comment section. And again, trust but verify. I'm not always right. Lord knows, just ask my wife. Yeah, that is something. Terry comes up and he says, it would seem like the money you receive would be coming from the individual and not from the U.S. government if the property is in Korea. Yeah, and that is another variable because as a military service member who lived here in Korea, I would get BAH, basic allowance for housing. The U.S. government would pay me that amount because I was authorized to live off post. Then I would pay my rent to the landlord. And then the landlord would have to pay taxes on that income. It's not free income just because it comes from the U.S. government. So as for a Korean citizen who's being a Korean citizen and living in Korea, their tax residency is Korea. That's another reason why it would, it leads me to believe that it would be taxable by Korea. So that would be very interesting. So yeah, and then the question comes up. Let me go ahead and get rid of this because we kind of did that. The question comes up, based on your description, we are referring to double taxation. Again, you're making worldwide income. Korea would take their tax if this is indeed the case. I'm pretty sure it is, about 98% sure. So the government pays a contractor or the military, and through that person or contractor, they pay you, the expat, for rent for the property. Korea would be able to tax that, but on your federal income taxes, you would be able to minimize double taxation or even do away with it because you get tax credits. Now, for this specific instance, I'm not exactly sure because maybe there's rates, and what is the difference between the rates, and I don't know. That is a really involved question that only a tax professional that is knowledgeable in this would be able to answer. So yeah, very good question. Very good question, and it's a question that I'm wondering about as well because I'm looking at buying another apartment and renting it out. And most likely, it is probably going to be to military service members and or contractors. I could rent it out to Koreans as well. But in the area, it's Asan Technical Valley. It's not like it's a big, huge secret. It's either going to be here close to Camp Humphreys in the brownstone apartments, but they're really proud of their apartment prices here. It is really, really expensive here because they are a cash cow. But Asan Technical Valley is like 15 minutes away, 10, 15 minutes away from Camp Humphreys. We're like 4 minutes away from Camp Humphreys. But Osan Technical Valley is a newer city, more walkability. It is really, really nice compared to the area right outside of Camp Humphreys, the Ville, so to speak. But there's a lot of military that are there. There's a lot of contractors. They have military school buses that have drop-offs and pickups there. So children can go back and forth to school. You don't have to worry and drive them every day. So it is also a highly desired rental area. And the walkability is great, but the prices are not as bad as as high as what they are here in Brownstone, which is right next to Camp Humphreys. So again, location, location, location. Real estate, it's always about location. So apartments are cheaper generally in Osan Technical Valley for E.G. the One is the apartment complex. Some people call it Easy the One, but it's actually E.G. the One apartment complex. And they've got 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 4-bedroom, 2-bath. So yeah, we're kind of looking at maybe a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And buying that outright, and then whatever profit we get, we're going to get dinged. You're going to get dinged on taxes one way or another. And in the United States, I think it's like we're at 28% or 30%. So whatever Korea taxes, they tax, and maybe we'll get the tax difference because of the tax credit. And on the federal income taxes, that income wouldn't get dinged as much. So it would probably still be under the tax rate that we pay, is what I'm guessing. I haven't dived into it, no deep dives yet on that. But as we get closer to saving up our nickels and dimes and buying that apartment, we'll definitely dive more into this. So yeah, I'm going to try to find a tax preparer and see if I can find one that does Korean and U.S. federal taxes, and then ask them this question like you're talking about, expat renting out to military contractors via, from the U.S. government. I can ask that question and maybe provide that link if I'm comfortable with them. I'm very hesitant about recommending people or businesses unless I have personal experience with them, kind of like the immigration lawyers that we used for our F1 and F4 visas. Great service. I recommend them highly. And matter of fact, for those of you, I know somebody's going to ask, whenever I bring up immigration lawyer, somebody always asks, well, hey, do you got their information? Do you have their business card? And so let me scroll down through here and see if I can find that. Oh, there it is. Boom. And we'll see if we can do this and pop this up there and bring this onto the screen. So for those of you, like I said, I don't normally recommend businesses that I don't actually use, and even then I'm kind of hesitant because people will have different experiences. Things change over time, but currently these are the immigration lawyers that we use. They're based out of Osan or close to Songtan, which is Osan Air Base, and the great thing about them is they're in the same building. Their office is in the same building as Korean immigration. So they are up to date on all of the stuff. And some people say, well, I can file my own, I can do my own F1 and F4 visa submission. Yeah, you absolutely can. But for me and my wife, it was, depending on the exchange rate, I think it was around $550 for both of ours. We do the renewals and all that stuff. I just didn't want to traipse around Korea. I'm retired. I can spend a little bit of money to get the work done for me, and they do a great job. So I highly recommend them. You should also know that I don't get anything out of this. On my channel and stuff like that, I'm very hesitant to do like affiliate programs. I do one with like Creality for 3D printing, but I don't get anything from these people here. It's just they did really good service. They've done good service for a number of other people that have used them, and so that's why I throw them up there. Thank you. I appreciate your valuable insights. You're welcome. I try, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Sloan Siemens says, I paid about the same. Very worth it. Yeah. I was chatting with a guy, and he was saying that, he was a little bit younger. But he says, yeah, we went to the Korean immigration office, and they said, well, you had to go up to Seoul and go to the Seoul immigration office. So they had a taxi, a train, another taxi to get to the Korean immigration office. They went there to submit their documents and so on and so forth. And they're like, oh, yeah, you don't have all the documents. And they're like, but this is what we were told. Because they called, the dude's wife called and got to the one of the Seoul immigration offices, and they said, well, these are the documents that they need. And it's like they wrote it all down. Here's what we need. We're good to go. And so they had all that stuff. They get up there, and they're like, yeah, you're missing some documents. And so now that's kind of a wasted trip. So it's a taxi, a train, another taxi to get back home. They had to go to a local city office, and then they had to get some other stuff out of their documents. Then they had to make another trip, taxi, train, taxi to the immigration office. They were able to submit that, and then they had to, it's just too, then they had to go back up and pick up documents, and it's just like, I don't want to do that. I really don't want to do that. And the immigration lawyers that we used, they're certified, the whole 9 yards, great service. And the cool thing is that they service the Songtan and the Camp Humphreys, Anjungni, Painsong up area. So the cool thing is that when we got our Korean registration cards, she texted or called my wife, whatever, said, hey, your cards are in, your IDs are here. And we're like, oh, okay, well, Osan is about 30 minutes away or so, and it's like, yeah, we'll hold on to them, we'll come pick them up. And they were like, oh no, I'm going to be in the area because I'm dropping off ID cards for other people that are in that area. And it's like, oh, so yeah, it was worth it. They're really nice. So yeah, is it worth it? To me and my wife, it was worth it to pay the $500 or so. It's not a big deal. And if you're skimping so much that you're worried about $500, I would be more concerned about, everybody likes to pinch pennies. I get it. We still do it, Wednesday at the food court on Camp Humphreys. They get discounts for salads and whatever. So the wife and I, after we work out on Wednesday, we go there and we get the $2 discount on salads. So yeah, we pinch pennies too. We get it. But for something like this, I don't want to have to make extra trips. I want somebody that knows what they're talking about. I want to know. And when it comes to immigration, and they're in the same building as immigration, so there's not one mess up on our paperwork. There's some suggestions, hey, any information that is in English, like your bank accounts, your federal tax returns, kind of a recapitulation of your income and so on and so forth. It's going to be in English, but also translated to have it in Korean. It'll just make things go so much smoother. Yeah, it's a thing. It's not required to put them into Korean, but that'll smooth things out and make things so much easier. They had everything in order. It's like when they took our visa applications, the immigration office was like, okay, well, we need this paperwork to really, by the numbers. And the immigration, well, here's this, the first thing. Okay, that's good. Here's the second and third. It was all in the order that they wanted. Everything was good to go. We're, boom, in and out and painless. And again, it only took one trip. So we didn't have to do multiple trips to Seoul or whatever and all that stuff. Yeah. So as Sloan says, it was very well worth it. And if you're retired now, come on, enjoy that. Spend a little bit of money to get some comfort and convenience. It's really nice. So anyway, that's what we end up having, talking about being retired in Korea. Will I get taxed twice? I'm living in Ibiza in Korea. We went over a number of those things. Social Security, military pension, VA disability does not get taxed. But when you have private pensions, when you have 401ks, IRAs, and things of that nature, other incomes from privates, those will get taxed by Korea, but you can get a tax credit on your federal income tax because of the tax treaty that the United States has with Korea. But then there's always the disclaimer: this is not professional advice. This is just a Joe drinking his vanilla latte, going over some information for entertainment or educational purposes. That is not professional tax advice. But it should point you into a direction to ask important questions to your tax professional and get the ball rolling. So yeah, but the question on the property and the expat and renting to military personnel, I will get on that and we'll take a look at that. So this is the dedicated video for all of those tax things that that I got asked before and people have been asking. Now I have another homework assignment to do for rental properties and how is that taxed. That'll be interesting. So anyway, if you got anything out of this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. You cannot find me on Facebook anymore because it's a faceless appeal process, no humans. It is what it is. So I'm going to try to find another social media outform. Maybe it'll be MeWe or something. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I don't even know if I could stream this onto YouTube and MeWe at the same time, but maybe it'll be Rumble, maybe it'll be something. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, if you want to contact me, and a lot of you have, there's the email address, official@thevariedlife@gmail.com. I answer every single email. Granted, it might be 1 or 2 days to reply, because I'm a busy retiree, but I do answer every single email. So hopefully you can appreciate that. If you leave comments on the videos, I kind of go over the comments, but I've got so many comments in videos. I've got a couple hundred videos or so. How many videos do I got? But with that, it's hard to keep track of all those, and it's getting to the point of where it's like, how many? Yeah, how are we going to keep track of all this stuff? So let me see. How many videos do I have? Does it say? I don't know. I got a bunch. I got videos going back to, like channel stats. Maybe I got videos published. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to figure that out. Whatever. So anyway, that's what we got going on. If you do appreciate it and you really want to do me a solid, you could buy me a coffee. That link is in the description box down below. And these people down here were cool and bought me coffee, so I have much respect for them. So anyway, do we have any alibis? I think we do. We've got one. Terry Lay says, thanks, Steve. I subscribed last year. Always great information. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for watching. And actually, for those people that are wondering, this is an outlet for me to keep my sanity. And even though I live close to Camp Humphreys, I'm very particular on the people that I hang around with. So I don't generally have a lot of friends. Very, very few friends. So I'm very, very particular on that. But with this, I like the fact to be able to have this social interaction and connection with people and people that are like-minded. And that's pretty cool because we can do this online. We can ask questions. We can have discussions. And I appreciate that. Just like if we went to a coffee shop back in the day and sit down and have coffee and talk, or a beer or whatever, chat over a meal, we can do the same thing on social media and streaming. So I really like that. And I appreciate, again, the comments, the discussions, the challenges, all of that stuff to, kind of open up the world that overseas retirement is something that's possible. And for some people, they love it. Other people, not so much. But if you know yourself and the more information that you have, the easier it is to make an informed decision. So that's kind of the whole point of my being an expat in Korea videos, is to kind of share our experiences, and maybe that will help you determine whether you want to be an American expat, whether it's Korea or some other country, or you just want to stay in the United States, which is totally fine too. Cool. Alrighty, if somebody that you know likes this type of stuff, please pass that on to them as well. I would appreciate that. But with that, I'm starving. It's almost 9 o'clock. We've been at this for about an hour. So I'm going to let you all go. Again, thanks for watching. I really appreciate that. And we will see you all on the next video. Peace. Yeah, good stuff.